This is my true story. After my wife passed, I raised my daughter with everything I had. I thought when I got older, she'd care for me with love and dignity. But I was wrong. One day, she locked me in her basement for a whole week. No light, no bed, just concrete. I thought I was going to die there. But what she didn't know is that I would survive and destroy everything she built. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there, and please subscribe so my story can help others. I was 29 when my wife died of cancer, left with a 5-year-old daughter and no family nearby. I had no choice but to become both father and mother. I worked as a mechanic during the day and drove a cab at night, slept maybe 3 hours a day, skipped meals so she could eat. I learned how to braid hair, pack school lunches, and sew her Halloween costumes because no one else would. Every report card I hung on the fridge. Every birthday I baked a cake, even when we could barely afford flour. When she wanted piano lessons, I picked up weekend shifts to pay the teacher. When she got sick, I took unpaid days to hold her hand in hospital waiting rooms. I gave her my everything, not because I had to, but because I wanted her to know love. Real love. When she turned 18, she wanted to move to the city for college. I emptied my savings account. I didn't even blink. I gave up my own retirement fund, the one I'd been adding coins to since I was 35, to pay her tuition, paid her rent, paid her phone bill, sent care packages every week. She never asked, but I gave anyway. That's what fathers do. When she got her degree, I clapped the loudest in the crowd. She looked me in the eye, smiled, and said, "I couldn't have done this without you." That sentence kept me warm for years. When she got married, I paid for most of the wedding. The dress, the flowers, the reception. Even though she said, "You don't have to," I did it anyway. I wanted her to have the fairy tale her mother never got. I gave a speech that night and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I believed, deep in my heart, that I had raised a good person, that she would carry the love I gave her into her new family. After her kids were born, I helped again. Diaper runs, doctor appointments, late-night babysitting when her husband worked overtime. Even when my knees began to hurt and my back gave out, I showed up. Because I still believed, one day, when I could no longer walk to the pharmacy, she'd take care of me. When my health declined, I asked to stay with her, just until I got stronger. She smiled and said, "Of course, Dad." I packed my things with a full heart, but I never expected what came next. At first, everything seemed fine. I had a small room upstairs with a window facing the backyard. I liked to sit there in the mornings and watch the light hit the trees. I made sure not to be in anyone's way. I folded my bed sheets every morning, washed my own clothes, helped with the dishes. I even tried to stay cheerful so the kids wouldn't feel like I was a burden. But slowly, I noticed things changing. She stopped smiling when she looked at me. Her tone became sharper, colder. "You're using too much hot water. Why is the heating bill so high? Why can't you remember where the remote is?" Small things, words that shouldn't hurt but did, because they came from the mouth of the child I raised. One day, I heard her whispering to her husband in the kitchen. My hearing's not what it used to be, but I caught enough. She said, "He's always around, like a shadow. He eats too much. He needs too many pills. I didn't sign up to take care of him like this." Her husband didn't say anything, just nodded. That hurt more than if he'd shouted. Then she started skipping my medicine when she did the grocery run. Said it was too expensive. I offered to pay, but she rolled her eyes and said, "With what money, Dad? You don't work." As if I hadn't spent my entire life working for her. Sometimes they'd go out to restaurants as a family and leave me at home. "We just need some space," she said. I didn't argue. I just sat by the window and waited for their headlights to come back. She started mocking me in front of her kids. "Grandpa's forgetful again," she'd say, laughing. "Don't grow old like that." The kids laughed too, and that broke me, because I had held her when she was sick, held her when she cried after her first heartbreak. Now I was just a joke. I told myself to be patient. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe life was hard and she just needed time. But the patience I had, the same patience I used to wait for her outside ballet class, to hold her during her fevers, to work extra hours for her school fees. That patience was wasted because she wasn't coming back. Not the girl I raised. This woman in front of me was someone else. And then came the basement. It was a Thursday evening. The sun was setting. I was sitting on the living room couch, trying to fold some laundry to feel useful. She came in, arms crossed, looking irritated. "Dad," she said, "we need to talk." I looked up. "Sure, sweetheart." She didn't call me that anymore, not for years. So part of me hoped this was going to be a good moment. Maybe an apology, maybe a soft conversation like we used to have. But her words were cold. "You're in the way. The kids don't feel comfortable. My husband says this house is too crowded. We need some space, just for a few days." I was confused. "What do you mean? You want me to go somewhere?" She sighed and said, "No, just downstairs. In the basement, until things calm down. You can rest there, watch some TV, and give us a little breathing room." It didn't feel like a suggestion, more like an order. I nodded slowly. "Okay, if it's just for a short while." She didn't even help me down the steps. The basement was cold, bare concrete. One dusty couch, no windows, no heater. A small light bulb hung from the ceiling like I was in a prison cell. "I'll bring you dinner later," she said. Then she shut the door. I heard a click. I tried the handle. It wouldn't move. She had locked me in. I stood there for a minute, stunned. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the door had jammed. I knocked softly. No answer. I knocked harder. Nothing. I shouted her name. Nothing. I banged on the door with my fists. I heard the TV upstairs, volume turned up loud, but no footsteps, no reply. No one came. That night, I slept on the floor with an old jacket for a blanket. I used a cardboard box to elevate my legs because my knees were swelling. I wasn't given dinner. The next morning, a paper plate with toast was pushed through a gap in the door. No hello, no check-in, no warmth. I was no longer family. I was furniture, or worse, I was garbage being stored away until someone decided what to do with it. The second day, I called through the door. "Sweetheart, please let me out. I don't feel well. My blood pressure pills." But she yelled back, "You're fine. Just rest. Stop being dramatic." I sat down slowly. My heart was racing. I felt dizzy. The air was stale. I could hear the kids laughing upstairs. A party was happening, without me. On the third day, they didn't even push food until evening. One slice of bread, no water. My mouth was dry. My joints ached. I tried to sleep, but the sound of footsteps above me made me feel like I was trapped under the world, trapped under my own daughter's life, like I was a roach crawling beneath her home. By the fourth day, I started talking to myself, whispering old lullabies I used to sing to her when she was sick. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." The sound echoed in the concrete room. I think I did it just to remember I had a voice. Because in that basement, I wasn't a man anymore. I was something forgotten. She didn't come check on me, not once, not even to see if I was alive. On day 5, I woke up in the dark and thought I had died. My back was stiff. My lips were cracked. My breath felt shallow. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is how I go, in the basement of the house I once paid for. The shame hit hardest on day 6. Not the hunger, not the cold, the shame, the humiliation. I had spent my life being her protector, her provider, her safe place, and now she had buried me alive, while she cooked meals upstairs. while she laughed, while she lived. That night, I cried. Silent tears. No sobs. Just quiet rivers of grief down my cheeks. I cried for my wife, who would have been heartbroken to see this. I cried for the version of my daughter that once held my hand in parking lots, and I cried for myself, for being so blind. Then came day 7. On the 7th day, something changed. I woke up early. My body was stiff from the concrete floor, my breath shallow, my head pounding. I sat up slowly, thinking it was just another miserable day, another cycle of scraps, silence, and shame. But when I looked up at the door, I noticed something strange. The lock. It wasn't clicked all the way. The metal latch sat slightly ajar. My hands trembled. I didn't know whether I was hallucinating from exhaustion or if someone had made a mistake. I stood up, knees cracking under my own weight, slowly walked to the door, turned the knob. Click. It opened. My heart nearly stopped. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just stood there in the doorway, breathing real air. I climbed the stairs, step by step, legs shaking, mind racing. I peeked into the kitchen. Empty. The house was quiet. Maybe they had gone out. Maybe this was my chance. I didn't take a coat. I didn't take shoes. Just stepped out the front door into the sunlight. The warmth hit my skin, and I wanted to cry again. But this time, out of shock that the world was still here. That I wasn't buried under it forever. I walked barefoot to the sidewalk. My legs felt like wood. I saw the neighbor across the street, Mrs. Halbrook. She was watering her plants. I raised my hand weakly. She gasped. "Mr. Keller? Oh my God. Are you okay?" I could barely speak. "Can I use your phone?" She rushed over, held my elbow. "Of course. Come in, please, sit." I shook my head. "Just the phone. Please." She handed it to me, her hands trembling as she looked at my face. Sunken cheeks, cracked lips, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. I dialed 911 with a shaking finger. The operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Harold Keller. My daughter locked me in her basement for a week. I need help. Silence. Then the voice replied, calm but alert. Sir, are you safe right now? I'm out. I escaped, but I need to report this, please. Help is on the way. I hung up and gave the phone back. Mrs. Halbrook asked if I wanted water. I said yes. When she returned, I drank slowly. It was the first clean glass of water I'd had in days. I remember every drop. 20 minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled up in front of my daughter's house. Blue and red lights flickered across the driveway I helped pay for. Officers got out, hands on holsters. I stood up from the porch. That's the house, I said. She's inside. They walked up and knocked. Her voice answered, cheerful, careless. Yes? Ma'am, we're here responding to a report of unlawful confinement. We need to speak with you. I watched from across the street as she opened the door, confusion turning into panic. They entered. 10 minutes later, they came out with her in handcuffs. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't crying. She just looked at me. No apology. No guilt. Just shock that I had dared to speak. She never thought I would, but I did. And now the world would hear everything. The officers did their job quickly. One stayed outside with her, my daughter, while the others searched the house. They asked if anyone else was inside. Her husband and kids were gone, probably at school or work. I stood across the street, wrapped in a blanket Mrs. Halbrook gave me, watching the scene unfold like a stranger in my own life. It wasn't long before one of the officers returned, face hard. He'd gone into the basement. He'd seen the truth. No light, cold floor, dirty plate, no toilet access, and a deadbolt lock on the outside, he said. That's not a misunderstanding. That's imprisonment. They brought out their phones, took photos, measured the lock, photographed the old jacket I had slept on, the dent in the couch cushion where I curled up, the crumbs from that stale bread. Then they recorded my statement, right there on the porch, while I shivered from cold and rage. I told them everything. The days, the door, the plates of scraps, the crying, the silence, the fear. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't scream. I just told the truth. It was enough. Her excuses crumbled in front of them. It was for his own good, she said. He was being difficult. He was confused. He kept getting in the way. We just needed a break. But her voice shook. She could see it was over. The officer stared at her and said, "A break doesn't require a locked door, no food, and no access to medical care." She tried one more lie. "He has memory problems. He gets confused." I stepped forward. "What's my name?" She paused. I said, "What's my birthday?" She looked at the ground. The officer turned to me. "Do you know where you are, sir?" "Yes. This is 218 Larchmont Drive. My daughter's house. I moved in 2 months ago. My name is Harold Keller. I'm 73 years old." He nodded. "Sir, you're lucid." "Thank you." She was arrested on the spot, handcuffed gently, as if they still couldn't believe someone who wore yoga pants and pearl earrings could do something so vile. But evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it wears perfume and smiles for the neighbors. She didn't fight them, didn't cry. She just stared at me like I had ruined her plan, like I had betrayed her, as if my survival was the crime. The neighbors gathered. Word spread fast. Mrs. Halbrook told everyone what I'd endured. Other neighbors gasped. I saw Mrs. Reeves shaking her head. Mr. Lenton crossed his arms and muttered, "Disgraceful." The car door shut behind her. They took her away. I didn't cheer. I didn't celebrate. I sat down on the porch, wrapped in that blanket, and wept. Because justice is not joy. Justice is quiet. It's the silence after you've been silenced, finally broken. That night, the police offered to take me to the hospital. I declined. I just wanted a shower, a clean bed. They arranged temporary housing with a local senior shelter. The officer who drove me said, "You did the right thing, Mr. Keller." And in my heart, I finally believed him. They say justice is slow, but I moved faster than they ever expected. After the police took her away, and I settled temporarily into the senior shelter, I called a name I hadn't spoken in years, Benjamin Moss, my old lawyer. I'd used him once when a neighbor tried to cheat me out of a property line years ago. He was honest, sharp, and more importantly, he was loyal. When he picked up the phone and I told him what happened, he didn't gasp. He went silent. Then he said, "Come to my office tomorrow. Bring everything you remember. We're not letting this slide." I didn't hesitate. The next morning, I sat in his office wearing a borrowed jacket and shoes, 2 sizes too big. My hands trembled from age and exhaustion, but my voice was steady. I told him everything. Dates, words, smells, scraps of food, the sound of the lock. He wrote it all down, nodding like a man quietly building a sword. He asked for the police report, the photographs, the arrest documents. I gave them everything. Then I told him something else. I want her out of my will. I want her name erased like she erased me. Benjamin leaned back and looked me in the eye. "Are you sure, Harold?" "That's final. Once we file this, she loses everything. Your house, your pension benefits, your stocks, even the burial plots." I nodded. "She buried me once already. Let her dig her own grave now." He began the paperwork. Over the next few days, I went back through decades of documents, insurance policies, bonds, estate plans. My daughter was the sole beneficiary of everything I owned, not because she asked, but because I believed she loved me. She didn't just stand to inherit my modest savings. She would have inherited my late wife's jewelry, my pension plan, the house we bought together, and even the small cabin we built with our own hands in the Smoky Mountains. But now it would all go elsewhere. First, we rewrote the will. Every clause that had her name, gone. Instead, I added 2 distant cousins who still sent me Christmas cards. I added my favorite charity, one that helped single fathers raise children alone. And I added the local library, which had given me refuge in my loneliest years. Then we filed civil charges, elder abuse and unlawful imprisonment. The police report supported everything. The photos, showing the lack of ventilation, the concrete bedding, the scratch marks on the doorframe where I had tried to open it, were enough to make the court wince. The judge who reviewed the case issued a court summons so fast I barely had time to process it. Benjamin said, "This isn't just revenge, Harold. This is a warning to people who think kindness is weakness." She was served the papers while she was still out on bail. I was told her hands shook when she read them. Her husband called the next day, pretending to care. "Harold, please, let's talk. She made a mistake. She was overwhelmed." I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I simply said, "She should have talked to me when I was locked in her basement, not now." And I hung up. When her trial date came, I walked into court with a cane and my lawyer beside me. She sat across the room, dressed like a woman trying to look small. No makeup, plain clothes, no wedding ring. Her lawyer tried to spin the narrative, that I was difficult, confused, forgetful. That locking me in the basement was a protective measure and not abuse. But the photos didn't lie. Neither did the officers who testified, and neither did I. I stood up, slowly, leaned on my cane, looked the judge in the eye, and said, "I changed her diapers. I sat in a plastic chair for 8 hours while she got her tonsils removed. I made paper snowflakes for her classroom in winter and cried the day she got into college. I was her father, her safe place, her home, and she locked me in a basement with no window and no warmth and left me to rot like spoiled milk. I'm not angry because she didn't love me. I'm broken because she did, and then decided I wasn't worth keeping." The courtroom went silent. Even her lawyer didn't speak. The ruling came 3 weeks later. Guilty. She was sentenced to 3 years probation, mandatory counseling, and 500 hours of community service. But more than that, the ruling shattered her professionally. She was blacklisted. Her employer, a local marketing agency, dropped her immediately. No appeal, no hesitation. Her name was in the news. Woman charged with locking elderly father in basement for a week. She lost friends, invitations, social circles. The PTA banned her from school meetings. The neighbors who once waved stopped looking her way. And the best part? The house she lived in, the one I had partially financed and co-signed, was under my name. Benjamin smiled when he handed me the document. "You're the legal owner, not her. She never finished the paperwork after her refinance attempt last year." I blinked. "You mean?" He nodded. "You can take it back, sell it, evict them." And I did. I served her a formal notice. "You have 30 days to vacate the property." Her husband tried to argue. I didn't listen. She wrote me a letter. I didn't open it. 30 days later, a moving truck pulled up. I watched from across the street. They packed their things in silence. No goodbye. No apology. They left like shadows disappearing at dusk. I sold the house 2 weeks later, donated half the money, kept the rest to finally take that road trip I always wanted, alone. And just like that, she was gone from my life. The silence that came after was unlike anything I'd ever known, not cold like the basement, not loud like her laughter upstairs while I starved, but quiet in a way that gave me peace. No shouting, no shame, no tiptoeing around my own daughter's mood swings. Just quiet mornings and a warm cup of tea. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The house was gone. I never visited it again after the sale. I didn't want to walk through those hallways where I was told I was a burden. I didn't want to see the staircase that led to the basement where she put me like a broken appliance. The new family who bought it never knew its history, and I preferred it that way. Let the house be reborn. I had no more use for it. But for her, there was no rebirth. The damage was permanent. Within weeks of the trial, she was let go from her job. Her employer cited public image concerns, and her coworkers, many of whom had seen the viral news article, didn't speak a word in her defense. Not one. I heard she applied to other companies. None replied. She even tried to freelance. That didn't work either. Who hires someone known for locking their own father in a dungeon? The neighborhood changed too. The same people who once complimented her lawn or invited her to birthday parties started crossing the street when they saw her. The woman who once hosted baby showers and garden brunches couldn't get a single RSVP anymore. One neighbor, the kindest one, told me quietly, "Harold, people can forgive a lot of things, but not that." Her kids, my grandkids, were shielded at first. But kids talk, classmates whisper, and soon enough, they knew. One of them told a teacher, "My mom got in trouble because she put Grandpa in the dark." I wept when I heard that, not just for the shame she brought, but for how casually her cruelty was now spoken by children. What was once our family secret had become playground gossip. Custody hearings began, not because I pressed for them, but because her own husband filed the paperwork, cited emotional instability, said her actions made him question her judgment as a mother. It broke apart their marriage like dry leaves in the wind. I didn't interfere. I simply watched as the storm she created came crashing back through her own windows. She tried to contact me once. A letter. No return address. No apology in the first paragraph. Just excuses. You were becoming difficult. You weren't yourself. I didn't know what else to do. I stopped reading. Because there's no paragraph long enough to undo what she did. No sentence that can unlock a basement door after 7 days. No word that makes you forget the sound of your daughter laughing above your head while you're hungry and cold. She had everything once, a family, a career, a future, but she traded all of it because she didn't want to be inconvenienced by the man who gave her life. And me? I didn't want revenge. Not really. I wanted to be treated with dignity, with the love I had once given freely. I wanted a bowl of soup without sarcasm, a warm blanket without a sigh. I wanted to be seen, not as dead weight, but as her father. Instead, she turned me into a secret. And now the world knows her truth. But there's more than just ruin in this story. There's freedom. And that's what came next. After everything, the arrest, the court hearings, the eviction, the silence, I stood alone on the porch of a quiet little cottage near the edge of a senior living community. No marble floors, no granite countertops, just peace. A small wooden bench sat under a tree that bloomed white flowers in the spring. There was a garden behind the house where I grew tomatoes and basil. The staff called me Mr. Keller, but the kids at the daycare next door called me Grandpa H. I liked that. My days were simple. I would wake up at dawn, brew a cup of black tea, open the window, and let the light touch my face. I started writing again. Old poems I had once scribbled in the margins of receipts, now typed neatly on a second-hand laptop. I made friends, real ones, not out of obligation or guilt, but people who laughed with me, sat beside me during music night, and asked how I was, not to be polite, but because they cared. There was a nurse named Clara who helped me with my medication. She once asked me, "Do you miss her?" I looked at the sky for a long time before I answered. "No," I said, "but I miss who I thought she was." That's the thing about betrayal. It's not just about what someone does. It's about what it kills inside you. I had to mourn a daughter who was still alive. I had to bury the version of her that kissed me on the forehead at 12, whispered she'd never leave me at 16, and told me I was her hero at 25. I had to let that version go, because the woman who locked me in her basement was not her. And that was the hardest part. But in that letting go, I found something I hadn't felt in years: dignity. I didn't have to shrink anymore, didn't have to whisper when walking past her bedroom, didn't have to wait to ask permission to warm my soup or charge my phone. I was free. And that freedom wasn't just physical. It was spiritual, emotional, a quiet kind of power that no one could steal, not even her. I started volunteering at a local youth center, helped teenage boys fix their bicycles, taught a few of them how to change oil. One of them asked me if I had kids. I paused. Then I said, "I used to." He looked confused. "What happened?" "She forgot who raised her," I said. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Sometimes people ask if I regret it, taking her to court, cutting her out of my will, selling the house. And the answer is no, because she made her choice long before I made mine. She chose silence when I begged. She chose comfort when I needed care. She chose the click of a lock over the sound of her father's voice. And now, I choose peace. I choose tomato plants. I choose laughter with strangers who became family. I choose long walks with a cane that keeps better rhythm than the heartbeats in that house. And I choose to never let her name cross my doorstep again. The last time I saw her, it was by accident. She was walking out of a courthouse, head down, sunglasses on, as if hiding from a world she helped ruin. She didn't see me, but I saw everything: the slouch, the weight of shame on her shoulders, the way people avoided her like she carried poison in her purse. She once said I was dead weight, but now she's the one dragging the chains of what she did. And me? I am light. I am free. I am alive in a way I haven't been in years, because she locked me in her basement, and I used the truth to lock her out of my life forever.